Welcome back to the Paranormal Papa Podcast, episode 41. Is the paranormal a new religion? With the amazing Peter Laws, coming to you from Ferocious Feline Studios in Cassopolis, Michigan.
Hey kids, it's Papa. You know, I find no shortage of things to discuss, talk about, and bring to you on this channel. And I, just found out yesterday that my old buddy Mark, my partner, is going to have some vacation time coming up this summer. He wants to get back out, put some boots on the ground, and do some more new locations, new investigations. And I can't wait. Now that I got my eyes back, now that I can see what's communicating with me, and I don't just rely on the third eye. Between the Renaissance Fair last weekend and the fact these people have known me for 7 years, many of the guests are reoccurring every year. They're coming back. They know me. I noticed the same question popped up multiple times when they would grab a business card or something like that and see what I done between my unique wedding ceremonies and the paranormal investigations and even the haunted history stuff. If you guys remember right, here a couple months ago, the wife's uncle passed away. And yesterday we had a celebration of life for him at one of the local parks. And I noticed the family asking the same questions that I was getting at the Ren Fair.
Is being a minister and a paranormal investigator a challenge?
Yeah, that question. You know, I could tell you again and again until I'm blue in the face and you get tired of hearing my voice exactly how unchallenging being a minister and a paranormal investigator really is. But I wanted to go to a different source. And here, a while back, the Paranormal Monkey done an interview with a very well-known horror writer, ordained Baptist minister, podcaster, public speaker named Peter Laws. Peter, though he's not officially a paranormal investigator, has encountered some of the same issues that I have. Personal issues. And also, probably a few questions about being a minister and being someone interested in horror and the paranormal. So I wanted to pull up that interview and let you guys check out what Peter has to say about living that dual life. this stuff is good.
Oh, hello. Try again. Hi, everybody. Hope you're good. I think tonight it's going to be a really, really fascinating one, and I'm delighted to welcome in Peter Laws for this evening, because I think with Peter's knowledge and expertise, it's going to be a great kind of conversation and a really good, not debate, but a really good kind of perspective, I suppose, on the paranormal. So I'm like to say, let's not dilly-dally, let's bring him in. There we go.
Hello.
There he is. Good evening.
Yeah, you're right.
Yeah, really good. Thank you very much. I'm really, really pleased that you managed to come on. Like I said, I know you've been in America really, really busy recently. So
yeah, thanks. It was fantastic. I mean, I was over doing a few author talks, but part of it was to stay in a place called Northeastern in Massachusetts, and they put up the authors in like a super spooky old mansion that was built in like 1860 or something. They put me on the third floor, which of course is the haunted floor. I'm not a paranormal investigator, so I wasn't there like, waving around EMF meters or anything. But it was pretty scary.
Yeah, I mean that's great. The fact that you've kind of been put up in somewhere spooky, that's ideal, isn't it? I take it they did that on purpose.
Well, no, that's just where they put the authors, and they said, look, you can stay here for a month. And I'm like, well, I can only stay for like a few days, because I was traveling around New England and Salem and other places like that, H.P. Lovecraft Town, Providence, Rhode Island. So I was doing all that stuff. But the 3 nights I stayed there, completely by myself. And like I say, I'm not a person who does this sort of thing normally, stays over in haunted locations. Yeah. But it was scary but fascinating.
Would you do it again?
Yes. Weirdly, the more I'm doing that sort of stuff, I think the braver I'm getting. But for me, it's about being alone. That's the thing that makes it scary. I think when I'm with another person in a scary situation, like a haunted house type situation, my enthusiasm is just through the roof, because it's exciting and all that. But crucially, I have someone next to me who can verify if what we heard or saw is in our heads or not. But when you're alone, and if you see some figure walking down the corridor, you have the option of, I'm seeing a ghost, but also, frankly, you have the option of, oh crap, this is where I've gone insane now. Yeah. And now I'm seeing things.
Thing is, it always changes when you're on your own. Psychologically, it's a massive difference when you're on your own.
Very much so, yeah.
Yeah. Okay, so obviously, you are, famously known as an author, as a podcaster, particularly with Into the Fog at the minute. It's just hugely successful. But
yes, thank you.
For anybody who is not aware of you, doesn't particularly know you, do you want to just say a little bit about yourself before we kind of get into things?
Sure. Well, I mean, my name's Peter Laws, and I've always been interested in the paranormal, the spooky, but also horror films. Those are kind of my two areas. I write a horror film column for the 14 Times magazine, as well as articles for them. But I've always been interested in the paranormal too. I think the quirky part with me is that I also got ordained as a church minister when I was in my early 20s, and worked in that sort of role for about 12 years, and then still do, chaplaincy type work and other church work here and there. But on the whole now, I'm kind of since I started writing books, and then now YouTube and podcasting, that's my main thing. But I think that can be a slight disconnect for people, because they'll think, oh, you're technically religious, although I squirm at that word, but like you go to church. And so therefore, if you're coming into the paranormal space, you're clearly coming in to try and save us from like the demons or, and that's just totally not what I'm about. I'm not a evangelical in that sense. I'm just a fellow traveler trying to figure out what the hell's going on in this world.
I think what I find really fascinating about your story is the fact that you first of all came into, I'd imagine, the horror films and the paranormal first before you became a minister.
Oh yes,
and that
definitely.
Actually, to a great extent, you were very anti-Christian when you kind of started off. I mean, you need to tell us about. I mean, you need to tell us first of all about, quite how far did that go? I mean, and you need to tell us about Creatures of the Night, because what a fantastic band name,
yeah.
first of all.
Yeah, I'm glad to, wow, I'm impressed you know that. Yes, when I was a teenager particularly, I was pretty kind of well-behaved at school, but I mean, I did some crazy things outside of school. But I worked hard at school and did that sort of stuff. However, I was super antagonistic towards the RE teacher, because she represented what I feel, and felt at the time, I should say, was a kind of a religion that was trying to stop me being interested in scary things and stop liking Dungeons and Dragons or watching horror films or whatever. So I hated that. And so I was very kind of critical of Christianity particularly. So I had a little band at school called Creatures of the Night, and we had songs like, I wrote a song called Diabolo, which was about spitting on the Bible and God being a loser and that sort of stuff. And I remember once I turned up drunk at a church's house group that were doing a Bible study, and I found out where they were doing this study, and I just kind of walked up, knocked on the door, like, "Hey, you want to convert me to God?" And then walked in, sat listening to all this God stuff, argued with them, but secretly, when they weren't looking, I'd pre-prepared a sheet of paper where I'd written down a note, which was supposed to be like a conspiracy from local witches that was saying, "Oh, we're gonna return and kill the Christians," or something like that, and stuffed it down in the sofa. I don't know what the hell I was thinking, but I just wanted to wind them up, because I felt that they were putting some sort of like barrier between me and discovering everything to do with the supernatural, God as well. Like, why can't that be on the table?
But how the bloody hell did you end up being a minister? With
yeah,
you start off like that.
Yeah, I know it is a bit weird. Although weirdly, I do think I have had this experience where the people who are really, really dead set against religion are sometimes that way because there's something about it that intrigues them.
Yeah.
And so often it's the people who are indifferent towards religion who probably aren't going to connect with it that much. I'm finding a lot of people who are very antagonistic towards it sometimes have something in them that either genuinely hates it, or that is attracted to it and hates the fact that they're attracted to it. And that was me. But yeah, anyway, I became a Christian at university, which was a mixture of, meeting a girl who I fancied, and she said she wouldn't go out with me if I wasn't a Christian. And I was like, oh, well, I'll rock it.
Oh, that's it.
Yeah, then. Yeah. So I've been keeping up this facade for ages because I'm married to her now. But no, I really am. But I went to the Christian Union because I thought, well, I didn't believe in commitment with girls back then. So I'm like, I'm going to go with everyone I can meet. And then I met her, and I'm like, there's something about this one. Maybe I want to kind of be boyfriend with this one. And then went to the Christian Union. And anyway, met Christians, and I thought, oh, some of them are shocking, but some of them are actually kind of interesting and intelligent. And that was intriguing to me. But in a long story short, that got me on the road to explore the potential of becoming a Christian.
I mean, the topic for this evening, we could talk about Into the Fog, we could talk about all the kind of episodes you've done, and maybe in future we can do that. But it is, the topic we're going to be talking about is the one that you've raised on your website, and we're going to go into in a little bit more detail, is your thoughts and your theories around, is the paranormal a new type of religion? And, first of all, where, is anybody, I mean, first of all, some people might think that's quite, quite a controversial thing to say in lots of ways. Yeah. I mean, where did this kind of thought and theory come from, essentially, for you when you first started putting this together?
Yeah, I recognize that it is an offensive theory, and it's certainly one that I would have been offended about in the past. But I think that's because I would have baggage related to the word religion. And so when I'm using the word religion, I don't mean the people who are into ghosts ultimately are just desperate to get into God. That's not quite what I'm saying. I'm saying that religion and the paranormal community, or that as a kind of worldview, it's amazing how similar they are in both their function and their kind of their drivers, the thing that drive people into it. And I found that in my personal life because for me, they're two parts of the same thing.
Right.
My interest in ghosts are ultimately me wondering, well, I'm scared of death and I want to try and find some sort of hope in the face of that. And I have an inkling that maybe there's something metaphysical going on in the world. That is actually the exact same motivations and thoughts that many of my religious friends have. It just, they have a different label for it. So I wouldn't want to unjustly offend people by their interpretations of my language. To say that it's a new religion, I guess that's a bit controversial. But what I'm really saying is, when you really start thinking about it, it scratches very similar itches.
Yeah, exactly. And I think, I suppose for most people that starts from, this thought of there being an afterlife, and or either seeking evidence of the afterlife or proof of the afterlife, or just that kind of interest in spirituality. I mean, in terms of I'm not talking about the religious side, but for the paranormal side, what was your starting point? Was it just because of the interest of horror films, and then you got into the paranormal that way, or did you seek something in the early years?
Yeah, I mean, in the early years, what I noticed was that when people talk to me about kind of normal topics like football or politics and that sort of stuff, I mean, I kind of find them semi-interesting. Well, not so much football because I'm not really into that, but
I think you've 1 minute.
Sorry,
myself there. Oh, it's all right. Your audio went then. It's okay.
Oh,
Let's come back.
Hang on. Let me just. Can you still hear me?
Yeah, I can still hear you. It's a little bit. It's kind of a bit tinny in the background now. But,
okay, I'm just switching something out here. I'll keep talking, and then we'll see if it improves. Let me see. 1 second. Oh yeah. Okay, how's that? Is that any better?
Yeah, that's better now.
Yeah, sorry about that. That's just obviously like poltergeist or something. Anyway, that's the beauty of being involved in the paranormal world. If anything technical goes wrong, you say, maybe the spirit. Anyway.
Well, a light being, dimming and coming back on again is a demon.
Yeah, exactly.
We'll come on to demons later.
Yes, definitely. But no, but when I was younger, I noticed that whenever somebody talked to me about things like UFOs or ghosts particularly, that just had a different effect on me because it suddenly opened up my world. It made my little existence as a young kid potentially adventurous and epic. I think that's what both religion and the paranormal do. It says, maybe you have the potential to connect to a whole new world, as Aladdin would say. And that's exciting. That, to me, that turns the colors up of everything. And so I started to find that those topics, and mainly paranormal topics, just made me both scared but also thrilled, particularly because, of a fear of death, because, there's certain topics that doesn't really help. Like, like for example, my books, I write, I've got 4 novels out, and those novels, my publisher kind of put them out in the crime fiction world on the shelf. I like crime fiction very much. I like crime fiction, I should say. But if I watch like an ITV drama about some like murder that's happened in the park, and ultimately they solve the murder, it just leaves me depressed because it makes me go, oh crap, people get murdered.
Right. Yeah.
But if it has any supernatural element, it makes me go, oh, people get murdered, but they might continue after. Yeah. That might not be the end of their story. And both religion and the paranormal are the vehicles through which we explore that idea. And so from an early age, I was drawn to it and still am. It's like baked in.
You mentioned obviously in your episode that, and you named, I think, named this the in-betweeners, but which I find really interesting is that who essentially, I think what you talk about is the vast majority of people who declare or regard themselves as spiritual, but not necessarily religious. Do you want to kind of outline a bit how you kind of like put some meat on the bones of who an in-betweener is?
Well, my first degree was in sociology, so I kind of like the way the world works. I'm a sort of big concept thinker rather than a tiny detail thinker. And so what's interesting about this is that, like, in the early 2000s, when we were starting to see the growth of ghost hunting shows, we were also seeing a real surge of what was called at the time the new atheists. Books like Richard Dawkins' The God Delusion, a book I read and found very interesting. Were causing something of a kind of ruckus in the religious world, because it was a feeling like, oh gosh, this is ultimately the downfall of religion, because everyone's going to start turning to atheism. And indeed, it did affect church numbers. Yeah. And we've seen a decline, well, throughout my lifetime, a decline in church attendance. But when you look at things like the 2021 census, you start finding that less than half of the people in England and Wales would call themselves Christian, or would say they believe in God, which is fair enough. But that doesn't mean that they are atheist, or I should say anti-supernatural, because 51% of them also ticked that, 42% of them also ticked that even though they didn't believe in God, they did believe in some form of the supernatural. And so this idea of the supernatural is not going away. And in fact, since then, it's only growing. You only have to look at the sheer, explosion of paranormal content to see that there's this gap in between. So while we thought maybe in the early 2000s, we're going to have mostly atheists and less religious people, what's happened is there's been less religious people, atheism and pure skepticism in the supernatural has come up a bit. Fair enough. Maybe they're right. But there's this much, much bigger in-between section. Sociologists call it the nons. And that means they are people who are open to the spiritual world or the supernatural world, but they don't attend a regular place of worship. So they don't follow an organized religion. And with all of these people in the middle, where do they go? And I believe many of them are going to the paranormal.
What I find really interesting is that you quoted something saying that basically you said that the paranormal is a way, and I did it in quotation marks here, the paranormal is a way of being religious without being religious. And I kind of like that in a way, the fact that, you're seeing, people want proof of the afterlife and kind of a spiritual quest, essentially a search for higher meaning, but actually you can perhaps be less not afraid of being out there. But it doesn't. I think it's easier in the modern age to say I've got an interest in the paranormal than it would be to say I'm a Christian.
Yes, it is, and yet both the things do essentially the same. They have the same social and same kind of intellectual function, which is both religion and the paranormal are essentially like they're an exploration of challenging conventional scientific and academic thinking on reality. So both of them are basically saying, hey, we think there's more to life than just flesh and blood. And that statement does fly in the face of kind of conventional wisdom. It's not the sort of thing you would hear said with a straight face in Parliament or in academics, places, institutions. That's what I'm thinking of. Yeah. And so all of these in-betweeners have to find a space in which they can not only explore those things, but explore them with like-minded people. And this is why, another reason why I think there's a similarity between religion and the paranormal community, because they both are strong on community. They feel like family. And this is especially important because when the conventional wisdom is that there is no such thing as aliens or there is no such thing as ghosts, it's quite a lonely feeling for some of us. And there might be some people listening to your show tonight, and they may know the feeling of opening their mouth and saying, well, I believe in that. And then everyone going like, you idiot, and putting them down for that. Or perhaps people who've had experience, this is important, people who've had paranormal experiences, haunted houses, poltergeists or whatever. And when they tell people about it, people are instantly, they're just after it. They're in it for money. They're in it for fame, which is often ridiculous because the people who share their stories often don't achieve those things. They actually end up getting the opposite. They get ridicule and get put down. And so it's actually a fairly kind of isolating belief. Like I think I mentioned in the video that you talked about before that I was at a dinner party a little while ago, and my wife took me to one side and said, "Peter, can you stop talking about poltergeists? Just scaring the guests."
No, keep talking about poltergeists.
Exactly.
It would be fine.
Yeah, and they were getting a bit scared, so, which is fair. But when you bring those topics up, when you bring the paranormal up, people on the whole are a bit more open and excited about discussing that.
Yeah.
But if you bring the topic of God up, because that has so much baggage, and everyone instantly slots it into, oh, you mean God doesn't you? So you want me to do this, or I'm not allowed to be that? Or it turns into all the baggage. Then it's harder, I think, to be open about religious belief than the paranormal. But both still isolate you because people can look at you like you're an idiot.
Well, what I find as well is that you mentioned this in the episode as well, but there will be some who will say religion has no place in the paranormal. That it is to a greater or lesser extent, it is an exploration of the paranormal using scientific methods and trying to collect evidence to prove one way or the other that the paranormal exists. Therefore, belief should have no part in this. That it's what's your response to those people who will say actually that's what the paranormal is. It's less to do with belief and more to do with this kind of this scientific approach.
Well, I mean, I do understand that people will say this is more about the scientific method, and actually I think that's true in so many ways, because that's one of the reasons why the paranormal appeals to the in-betweeners, because the in-betweeners are scientifically literate, or at least some of them think they are, and so they and so they want to employ science and testing into their procedures. And so yes, when you watch ghost hunting shows and or if you see paranormal groups doing their thing, then it certainly does have the appearance of the scientific method. And don't get me wrong, many of them really are following the scientific method properly. Not all. Some are doing it from basically a kind of, well, I mean, I spoke to Alan Murdy once, an author and a speaker on ghosts, and he said, when people are in old buildings kind of waving around EMF meters and stuff, they, in their heads, they think they're doing a modern scientific approach, but to him, it's more akin to a sort of revival of like Victorian spiritualism.
Yeah.
Which and that's not to disrespect it. It's just saying it's not neutral. This is the thing that I do believe there are neutral, scientifically minded paranormal people out there, and so they are just interested in the truth, and all they want is to discover if it's true or not. I know those people exist. However, after meeting thousands of people within the paranormal community, I would say the majority of people I meet are ultimately not neutral. And by that, I mean, they do employ these methods and testing, but ultimately they want it to be true. They're aching for it to be true. They're trying to discover it's true, and they'll be disappointed if it's not true. And so there are some sociologists who say, if that is your approach, then your desire is to find the supernatural. Like there is some, which is in the same way as a religious person hopes to find God, but might have doubts. So again, the word religion is not helpful. It doesn't mean that paranormal people have to, get sort of all moralistic and stuff like that. But there's similar itches. And so because we've seen the decline in religion, we're not seeing those urges disappear. They're just being met in a different way.
Do you think there are more similarities than people might not want, more similarities between the church and the paranormal than people, would like to admit? essentially. You're thinking,
Yeah.
actually, if I'm thinking about it, yeah, but we'll not go down that avenue because it's kind of like we don't want to wrap up the paranormal and religion too much because it's its own being essentially.
Yeah, absolutely, and I understand why some people would be reticent to sort of connect those two things, because especially when there's so many religious idiots and monsters, that some people within the church are just that they're so backward and scientifically suspicious and regressive in their politics or their beliefs about people and how we should live and who we should love and all those sorts of things. I totally understand why people reject religion in that sense. But what's interesting about the paranormal is that the paranormal is popular because it offers the exploration of the metaphysical world without any moral expectations.
Right. Yeah.
That's what makes it attractive, and that I do not want people to hear me there by thinking people who like the paranormal are immoral and people who like religion are moral. No. In fact, I know not millions, but I know many people in the world, and lots of those paranormal people are way more moral, if you want to call it that, than Christians. I know some Christians are just horrendous. Honestly,
it's quite refreshing for you to actually say that, because I'm sure there's quite a few people who are, Christian that wouldn't even go down that avenue for you to say that.
Well, so maybe, but I mean, I'm just telling the truth. With church abuse, for example, and hypocrisy and just and sexism and racism institutionalized in some churches, and just there's a lot of stuff it would be difficult to not believe that, I think.
Yeah.
And so it's no wonder that paranormal people want to step away from that moral world. But what it ends up doing is it creates a surprising vagueness when it comes to the paranormal. So people can say things like, and I used to say this, I want to believe in ghosts because it gives me hope of life after death. But actually, what does that life after death look like? Is that perpetually for the rest of eternity walking up and down a corridor in which you had your worst moment when you were murdered, like a ghost being repeatedly going through their final moment? That sounds like hell. That sounds awful.
Yeah.
So why would that give us hope? So there's a big vagueness to the paranormal, which is attractive when it's early. But then for some people, when they face death, for example, they get a bit scared because they suddenly think, oh, crap, have I got anything to hold on to here? But some do, but some don't.
Yeah, I was going to say that you mentioned what's called death anxiety and the role that the fear of death actually plays with the paranormal and religion. And you also, I think in The Frighteners, your book, The Frighteners, you talked about essentially our obsession with horror, the paranormal, death, in particular.
Yeah.
Do you want to kind of outline that in a bit more detail?
Yeah, I mean, the book, The Frighteners, was an amazing book to get to write. I traveled to Transylvania and Rome and all across Britain.
Yeah, you got no sound. Yeah, I've just let him know.
You hear me now?
Oh, I can. Yeah.
Right, no, thank you. I've got to keep an eye on my little controller here. What were we talking about? Oh, yeah, death. Right.
About fear of death anxiety, the fear of death. Oh, you gone again? Hang on. Let me tell you.
Okay.
Oh, there you got sound now. It went again and then it's come back. You're fine. We'll get there eventually.
I'll keep an eye on that. And then, right, sorry, death. Yes, death is trying to stop us talking about it. Typical. But no, when it comes to death, it certainly is something that we can't just ignore, but we have to handle in ways that we can handle. We have to kind of approach it in ways that we can handle. And so with horror films and horror culture and the paranormal, it gives us a way of dealing with the inevitable with a thread of hope and even adventure to it. And so I'm that's certainly what I do with horror. Like I'm not interested in horror because I find, I don't get excited when I hear about some guy gets murdered in real life. Like I'm not a freak. I enjoy horror because it's exciting, but it's also helping me take control of my fears in some way. And the paranormal does that too. What's interesting about death anxiety is that there are two groups that are not that scared about death. The first group are the deeply religious. And I've met many deeply religious Christians who, when they face death, it's amazing. They're just like, whoa, I'm on my way to heaven.
Are they really
Yes.
that kind of full on?
Yeah, it's amazing. I mean, some are. I mean, okay, they might not punch the end and say woo.
I was going to say, wow.
Yeah, but that's the principle. They're saying like, oh gosh, I can't wait to meet my God, or like, or I can't wait to go to paradise. And yes, death's a little bit scary, but man, I'm looking forward to the other side. And so they're the deeply religious people, not that scared of death. There are the other side of it is atheists have less death anxiety. That doesn't mean that they're not scared of death. I mean, they're just normal people like everyone else.
Yeah.
But what's interesting about them is that they don't complicate death. So if a friend gets killed in a plane crash or something, it's horrible, and they cry just as much as any other person would, and yet they don't complicate it with things like, where are they now? Are they in heaven? Are they in hell? Will their ghost come back? Or did they die because of a curse? Or did they die because they did something wrong? Did God destroy them? Did the demon get them? They can just latch onto the beauty of their life and the simplicity of the death, if you will, the chaos of life. The people who have the most death anxiety are in the middle, the in-betweeners. It's most of us who aren't sure.
So essentially, you think that there's an absolute direct link between us as spiritual beings, albeit not in a particularly religious way, and that fear of death, and therefore that's why we go looking for proof of life after death, essentially.
Yeah, I think so. I mean, I wouldn't want to say for everybody, but I think it's comforting to think that your loved ones have not disappeared. There's an offensiveness about death which fuels both religious and supernatural interest. There's a feeling that this can't be right. There's something more to life, and that can move people into the paranormal, but not for everyone. Some people are just not scared of death, and yet they just find this topic really interesting. So I wouldn't want to say all, but I'm just not surprised that the people in the in-betweeners with the most death anxiety are the ones who are trying to focus on death in a way that has threads of hope in it.
Have you? I'm just interesting. Have you ever been conflicted yourself? In your life between the paranormal and being religious yourself? Have you had any conflicts between those two subjects or not?
No, not personally, but that's because probably I don't believe, for me, that I have to choose.
Right.
There is, I think, a false sort of dichotomy that happens with the modern world, where people are told, well, who are you? Do you believe in this stuff, or do you not believe in this stuff? Do you believe in God, or do you believe in ghosts? Are you a UFO person, or are you a poltergeist person? Like, choose your side, choose your camp.
Yeah.
And some people's brains work like that, and they need to slot in. But I can't slot in that well. And so this is why I'm quite frustrating to fellow religious people. And in fact, some of the reasons why I'm classed as a really dodgy heretic. I've been called a heretic by
Really?
some religious.
How bad?
I've been banned from preaching in certain churches because I don't mind people being gay, things like that. So I've been called a heretic before, but I think that's because, like, I think God might not exist. like I'm a Christian, but I don't think that means I have to be 100% all in.
I was going to say that. I mean, that's the thing. I've always got that impression. Actually, if you're a reverend, as you're a reverend, and that you had to be essentially 100% all in. It was all or nothing, essentially.
Who is all in with anything? Like, I mean, like if you're open-minded and intellectually robust, I think you've got to leave the door open for doubt. But doubt is not a problem. People seem to think doubt is a weakness. To me, doubt is the natural partner of faith, and I mean faith in anything. I don't think. I mean, even in the Bible, God never sort of says that you have to have 100% faith, because if He would have turned up and showed us every day in front of us, but He doesn't. So it says. There's something special about having the faith in the thing you don't see, because there's something mysterious and powerful about that. But for me, it's possible that God doesn't exist, but it's almost like when you vote for a political party, like, do you vote for the political party because you 100% believe in everything they say? Not necessarily. But even if you're 51% towards one and 49 to another, you'll cast a vote and you'll say, well, I'm going to vote for that one. So in my life, I'm walking through the mystery and I'm learning from other people. This is another reason why some Christians find me heretical, because like I'm quite happy to learn from, atheists. I've got friends who are spiritualists, Satanists, Wiccans. Like I'm prepared to learn from anybody because I think we're all on ultimately a similar quest for answers.
Yeah, and one of the things you also mentioned was that you feel as though the paranormal is essentially has gained popularity because I think you talked about it being based on evidence, on collected evidence or sorting evidence, and not relying on what you might regard as pure faith. It's not, you don't have to it's not based on blind faith. Sorry. And that you think that as well lends itself to people being more kind of down the paranormal camp.
This is another reason why the paranormal has a kind of masterstroke and is perfectly fitting for the modern spiritual quest mindset, because we want to test things, and indeed we should. There's nothing wrong with that, and so we want to have actual evidence of things that are going on. But if you contrast that with religion, I mean, it's not like that, sadly. So I think if you're a paranormal team out there, I really do think you should explore this. If you find a local charismatic church, and if they're claiming to have miracles, or if they're claiming that God is turning up and doing amazing things, and there's a church just up the road where wild stuff happens up there, or claims of wild stuff happens, healings and all sorts, then why aren't paranormal teams rocking up there and saying, look, can we test this? We don't believe in God, but what happens if there's something here? Could we just set up a few bits of equipment? Could we sit here? Could we interview people and explore if something changes in the air during a Pentecostal church service? I mean, nothing might happen, but the point is that stuff doesn't happen in church because there's this feeling, well, don't test, don't put God to the test. You should just believe, and that just doesn't wash with the modern mindset. So that's why the paranormal is so fitting, because it actively says test and test again.
Yeah, I do find it really that whole kind of subject really fascinating. Why can't we go? I mean, I've seen plenty of videos of people going into churches that have been deconsecrated, trying to find evidence of ghosts.
Yeah.
After dark, but not when they're up and running and in the middle of a church service.
Exactly. And this is one of the ironies, I think, when it comes to the paranormal and religion, because in many ways, I'd say people in the religious world are very close-minded when it comes to the paranormal world. It's why we have two ghettos. They're two separate groups, sadly. Even though we share the same journey and the same goals, it's almost like two teams. Choose your side, which I don't believe you have to. But anyway, what tends to happen is the religious people can say, well, look, we believe in certain types of the paranormal, the afterlife, angels, demons, but we don't believe in any of the other stuff like, ghosts or whatever. And so they can be quite close-minded. But I don't think the paranormal people should strut along and say, well, we're very open-minded, aren't we? Because they are open-minded until it comes to the topic of religion.
Yeah.
So I've sat with I've sat for hours chatting to my paranormal friends, and they will very happily believe in fairies, in Jeff the Talking Mongoose, in shadow men, and all these. And I'm not trying to say they don't exist or they do, but they're just like, well, that's clearly true. Or there's a lot of evidence. Look at this picture of an elemental. So they're very happy to accept that. And then as soon as anyone brings up the topic of, well, is it possible that the cosmos could have been created by a character, by an individual, a person, or a deity with personhood, people just laugh and they think, like, you believe that? Even though
we'll stick with Jeff the Mongoose.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
But like throughout history, I mean, like that idea has been shared by millions and millions of people throughout the world, and still today, including scientists or whatever. I'm not saying you have to believe in them. That's not what I'm trying to say. That's not the point of this point. But this is where paranormal people are closed-minded, because they'll be open to lots of things with scant evidence.
Yeah.
And then the stuff that has all of this other evidence behind it, they'll almost say, well, there's no evidence of that. And I think there's a blindness in both camps. That's why I wish we would be together more.
And like I said, I'm just going to put this up on the screen for anybody. Obviously, it is an absolutely fascinating conversation. And like I said, I do love this subject, actually, because funnily enough, I didn't think I would. But I do. Yeah. I really do. Because the more you talk about it, and the more you kind of open people's mind to actually the similarities between religion and the paranormal is actually quite a lot.
Yeah. Can I add one thing, actually, just if we're going to go to questions soon? It's just to say another evidence to say that that religion is similar to the paranormal is, I do believe that there's a decline in religious attendance, and that a lot of these people are starting to gravitate towards the paranormal. And I think that explains why the paranormal field is increasingly being discussed with religious sounding rhetoric. There was a time when you talked about Bigfoot, Fortean people just said it's another creature that we haven't discovered yet, a zoological mystery. Now you see documentaries about Bigfoot possibly being supernatural or paranormal or an intergalactic or an alien, or indeed with aliens. There was a time, in the 1950s, it was like little green men from another planet. They were ultimately just other beings that came from another planet. Whereas now the rhetoric is they could be deities who may have even created us. They could be more than just they might be our creators. And similarly with ghosts, I mean, like, you can't have not noticed how many ghosts are now referred to as demons.
I was going to say about demons, and the fact that and certainly in the mainstream media, ghost hunters have kind of latched on to this whole thing of demons, and I was going to say, what's your view on that?
Well, my view is that is happening precisely because people with religious leanings or religious backgrounds infiltrate is maybe not the right word, but are seeping into the paranormal space and bringing their base worldviews into it. And so that's why you're seeing this interesting fusion of religion and the paranormal, so that so ghosts now become demons or demonic, or you start seeing like ritualistic approaches to paranormal investigations. So it's not purely, scientific monitoring, but there's people like, sage and burning sage and having like sort of ritualistic type things going on. Again, I'm not saying that's bad or good, but it's this fusion of those two worlds.
Do you think, people are more likely, and I've seen this in the paranormal as well, I will go on to questions in a second, but do you reckon people are more likely to latch onto pre-Christian ideas of spirits? I've seen so much around the fairies, the fae, the paganistic rituals and things like that, and it's stemming from pre-Christian things. I've seen that as well.
Yeah, there's certainly a growth in that, but I do think it would pale in comparison to the numbers who have a more kind of Christianized view of the paranormal, where it's the devil versus a good spirit, or it's demons. So certainly there's plenty of talk about fairies and pre sort of historical figures, but I think that most people who are just on the street can understand the idea of like the devil and demonic a little bit more. Even if they don't believe in them, they can latch onto that a little bit easier.
Yeah. Right. I'm gonna hunt for a question. So if you've got a question for Peter, now is the time to get it in, guys. I've seen your question, Beardo. I'm gonna ignore the question.
What is it?
Talking about how magnificent your hair is, Peter, is what he's basically
talking
about.
Wow. Well, thank you very much. At least this while it's still there, could slip off any minute.
Here we go. One here, Cat's Meow, saying, do you believe the paranormal is possible?
Absolutely, yes. So my openness to God is the exact same with the paranormal. And so if I was to vote on the paranormal, ghosts and stuff like that, it's the same as God. I have plenty of cynicism and doubt, but not as much as I have belief. And I think the more eyewitness accounts that I encounter, the more I believe. And so I don't like it when people dismiss eyewitness accounts as not being evidence, because I do think it is evidence which can be abused, but is sometimes very true. So yes, I do believe the paranormal is possible.
Okay. Phil is saying, what do you think of Richard Felix's theory that ghosts are people fearing hell?
It's an interesting theory, but I'm not convinced that people are thinking about hell that much. It's a little bit like Stephen King's The Shining, great film and book. And when he was making The Shining, when Stanley Kubrick was directing The Shining, he called Stephen King and he said, look, Stephen, I want to talk to you about ghosts. Don't you think ghost stories are inherently hopeful? Because they ultimately are telling us there's life after death. And Stephen King came back and says, well, they're not hopeful if you believe in hell, because then death becomes potentially a terrible, terrifying thing. For me, I think Kubrick is more in touch with the general feeling of people in the world, like the modern mindset, which is, I don't think people think about the concept of hell that much. And so therefore, I think they initially find ghost stories as just a hope of some generic life after death. I don't know if they think it's a fear of hell, but I don't know a lot about Richard's full theory on that. So I'm not saying he's wrong. It's just in my practice, I don't really think people think as much about hell as they used to.
I think his idea is that the reason why we have so many Victorian ghosts is because it was much more prevalent idea of heaven and hell, and that's why they were too scared to pass over.
I see. Okay. Oh, sorry. Well, yes. I that's interesting. Like I don't want to get to the bad place, so I'd rather hang out in a holding cell before then.
Essentially, yeah. So Spookface saying, have you had a paranormal or UFO experience?
I haven't really had a significant UFO experience, Spookfest, but I have had what I might call a paranormal experience, and I did actually just do a full video on this on my Into the Fog with Peter Law's YouTube channel, available now. And I think it's like 50 minutes long, but that was an experience where 3 kind of inexplicable things happened that seemed to be linked, seeing weird figures and sounds, and that was just wild. It's too long to go into, so probably check out the video. But that's an experience that I struggle to explain. And I also had another experience when I was in New England, where something weird happened. I'm doing a video about that this weekend, though.
I was going to say, we won't say too much about it. Did you get any kind of capture anything about it, or was it just a personal experience?
It was just personal experience. And so because I'm not a ghost hunter, and I wasn't there ghost hunting or investigating, I was just, doing talks and writing about places and presenting stories about them. And it's just being in that place, like a couple of things happened there, which, who knows, maybe were in my head, but I've just never had an experience like that before.
Cool. Okay. Brian Reinhardt saying, what does religion say as far as ghosts being forced to stick around as opposed to going to a heaven?
Well, I mean, certainly Catholics are statistically more open to the theory of ghosts than Protestants. And that's because Catholics have this belief in purgatory, this kind of middle ground between heaven and between like life and the hereafter, as it were. And so they're a little bit more open to the potential thinning between worlds and crossover. And so, yeah, you'll find Catholics a little bit more open to ghosts, whereas Protestants, particularly evangelical Protestants, tend to dismiss ghosts completely. I think they're wrong to do that, but they tend to, and they seem to think that the Bible is very anti-ghosts, and that whenever the Bible talks about ghosts, it's actually talking about demons. And that's where we get a lot of this demonic rhetoric from, because a lot of the American paranormal world are the ones that bring in the ideas of demons rather than ghosts. So, yeah.
Cool. Phil has decided, what do you think apparitions are?
Good question. I'm not sure. I'll tell you what I don't think they are. I'm not a big believer in stone tape theory. I mean, it's an interesting idea. It's a kind of cool concept, and I love the Stone Tape by Nigel Neal. But I tend to find that I just can't get my head around that. So while I'm open to it, I don't necessarily think they are recordings played over. Whether or not they're time experiences where somehow there are glitches in time and we are somehow experiencing things. I was thinking about this in the car the other day, like the idea of God being eternal and therefore outside of time. And then God, theoretically, in theology, is supposed to experience everything all at once if he wants to, or she wants to, however you want to use the gender. But is it possible that, we have glimpses of eternity where suddenly we are outside of time and we can just see things happening? Oh, my light just went off. Creepy.
There you go. It's a ghost. It's a demon.
But maybe they are actually spirits of the dead moving around, walking around. Why not? I think it's possible it could be that.
I'd be interested to get your view on this one. Gareth is saying, do you think people can really get possessed, or do you just think that they're mentally ill and the church is exploiting them for their own needs?
I think that, excellent question, Gareth. I do think that there is a potential exploitation of people who feel like they're possessed. But what's interesting about possession, and I've written about this my fourth novel is called Possessed, and it's all about possession. And it's about the rise in demand for exorcism. It's really like there's more demand for exorcism today than there ever has been, and it's growing. Like a few years ago, the trendy thing was fidget spinners. Now it's the internet. It's the the ancient rite of exorcism that people seem to want. And there's reasons for that. And some Christians will say it's because the devil is on the march. There's more demonic things going on. I personally think it has more to do with the stigma around mental health, and that we find ourselves so stigmatized with the idea of having a label on ourselves. So if someone says, look, I've got depression, or I have anxiety, or I have schizophrenia, or whatever, that feels, it shouldn't feel like this, but it does for some people, like it's our fault.
Yeah.
Like it's something to do with me. And so there's an interesting psychological switch where if you can blame it on, and I'm talking about the person who's suffering, if you can blame it on an external invader that is not you, and that can even be removed after a ritual, that's for some people, particularly religious people or religiously leaning people, can be preferable because it just feels less about you and more about being invaded. And so I think some people go for exorcisms because they are suffering mentally, but for them, that's too much to take, and it's less disturbing to think of it as a demon, because the demon's not you, and the demon can go.
Right. One here from my brother, Brett. He's saying, have you had any more thoughts on the dark figure you spotted when you were a teenager?
Yeah. Well, thanks, Brett. Yes, this is referring to the experience I mentioned, which is in my recent video. And the recent video, basically, it's me discovering like an old 1993 diary of mine and rereading an experience, which I hadn't forgotten by any stretch, but I did have more detail in it, of me and my friends doing ghost hunts, and then basically a friend of mine coming and saying he saw a ghost, and then me and another friend going with him, and all three of us going into this old building, outside this old building, and seeing this sort of inexplicable dark figure, and then another figure chasing us, and then sounds, and then a few years later that figure coming back again. It was just crazy. Thoughts on the dark figure? I keep thinking that like that's over, and when you watch the video, you'll know why I think it's over. But I must admit, when I went over to America and I was staying in this old house, this old mansion house, and that video came out while I was in America, there was this like backbeat of tension in my heart, I think, when I was in this building. And I thought, what happens if that thing comes back? Like, what happens if it's the return? But I didn't think it did. I didn't think it did. But a few days ago, in fact, yesterday morning, I was in the Northeast, and I was just near the place where it happened. And a voice in my head, well, my own head, said, go up, hop over and just see what's over there. And I just said, no, I'm not going. I'm not going there.
I tell you, when you've had an experience, it does play on your mind, I've got to say. Because just very, very quickly, Mike Lowry, I've just seen you gifted 10 memberships. Thank you so much, Mike. Thank you. Bless you. Thank you. So generous. Thank you. Okay, I'm just going to skip past these little greens on here, trying to get any more. I'm just aware I don't want to miss people's questions. Here we go. Walking the Weird is saying, Peter, are you still involved in the church? Is it hard to balance your own religious beliefs with your love of the paranormal?
Well, firstly, hello, Walking the Weird. And if anyone's not following Walking the Weird, please do, because her channel is just really fascinating and really great for exploring strange places, and it's worth following. Yes, I am still involved in church, although not quite as much as I used to be. And I still do some services here and there, but not as much. To be honest, like this year, particularly my YouTube channel, I started it and kind of was hoping it might do well, but it's just done quite a lot better than I maybe expected, which is amazing.
Hugely well.
Which is fantastic. And so it's the sort of thing that I'm not really able to go full time with it just yet, because I still do a few kind of churchy types things here and there, but it's not like far off, I suppose. But I still do some church-based stuff. But on the whole, no. And is it hard to balance my own religious beliefs with my love of the paranormal? No. And that's precisely because they are both the same thing. To me, they're both a quest to discover if, in a sense, I mean, I put it this way, both the religion and the paranormal ask two questions. They ask, is there anybody there? As in, is there anybody there on the Ouija board or, in the ghost haunted room? And is there anybody there around me, walking with me and on this lonely, freaky road of trying to understand if we're alone? And religion asks the same thing. It's just they say, is there anybody there? And looks up, and is there anybody else there who'll be in community with me? And I think my hope is that those two groups discover that they have similar interests and that they don't demonize each other so much, and then they become friends. But not everyone is going to be prepared for that, because each can look at each other like they're the enemy.
Yeah, no, absolutely. I will stop fairly soon to the last couple of questions. Wayne Dawson saying, so why would being religious have anything to do with believing in the paranormal or not? Surely it's just down to the individual.
Sorry, I'm trying to understand that. Well, I think I'm not sure if I understand the question, so apologies, that's me being thick, but I think like it is always down to the individual. But I think my point is that the idea of God is a paranormal topic because it's saying there's something beyond us. There's something kind of another dimension to this world. And so that's not normal. That's paranormal. It's beyond or outside of the normal. And so I'm just saying that the two things tick similar boxes. But yeah, it's totally down to the individual. So Wayne's quite right.
Okay, Steph Lay is saying, do you think the increase in interest in this area will result in better quality research and eventual proof of the paranormal, or just lots more interesting personal accounts, or both?
Hi, Steph. That's a really excellent question. I do think that there is a growing acceptance that maybe the paranormal is a potential reality. And I mean, you see this particularly with, UAPs and the more open nature towards that. So I do have hope that it will lead to better funded quality research. Whether we get eventual proof of the paranormal, I don't know, because people's versions of proof are they're like shifting sand. When you say something about here's an eyewitness account of a whole family that saw this, and then they'll say, well, I don't believe it because there's no video. In a world where video can be faked so easily, it's almost like the proof is a slippery slope. Like it's almost like how do we get definitive proof that we can't doubt? Yeah. And frankly, even if God turned up to me right now and said, Peter, I want you to go and be a fisherman in the Red Sea, I'd probably think, yeah, I had too much cheese, I'm not going. You know what I mean?
Cheese.
I'd rationalize it because even proof in front of you is sometimes not enough. So I don't know if we'll ever have proof of the paranormal, but I don't think that's the point. I think this is where we come in with this idea of faith. There is something magical about the mystery. I think there's something deeply human about being excited by the mystery. It's like Bigfoot. I mean, I'm fascinated by Sasquatch and Bigfoot, but I can't lie. If they discover Bigfoot tomorrow and it turns out that it's just another, simian that we never knew about, I'm going to lose interest in it. I'll be interested in it for the next couple of weeks, but I'll be like, oh, right, it's just another
thing.
Animal.
Yeah.
It's there's something about the mystery that makes us human, I think.
Okay, last couple of questions. Mike Omen was saying, is it possible that empathy is the key to understanding whether you can see or feel the unknown side of reality? He says, hope that isn't too vague.
Oh, interesting question, Mike. I do think empathy is vital. It's not only vital for us in this world because we have such a tribalistic view of the world where everyone kind of is suspicious of one another. Everyone curates their own communities that, we've developed a kind of enemy mindset. And that can happen when it comes to the paranormal. And so I think, firstly, we need to have empathy for witnesses of the paranormal and understand that it isn't just them. Sometimes it might be them making it up, but it's not. But whether or not empathy allows us to actually see the paranormal, I mean, I don't know. That's a fascinating idea. But there are certain haunting cases where the spirit in the house seems to make some sort of connection with someone in the house. And whether a person is more empathetic, who knows? Or it's the other side where someone's more terrified and maybe the spirit feeds off that fear. I don't know. But empathy is a vital skill in all walks of life. Maybe it is in the paranormal too.
Okay, last two questions. Simon is just saying there are loads of different religions all over the world and all are very different. He's interested to hear your views on that.
Oh, right. I'll see if I can squeeze this in.
It's quite a big one.
Okay, in alphabetical order. Buddhism. No. Well, like I say, I'm an open-minded person. And so therefore, I do feel that we're all on the same kind of track trying to figure out what's going on. I don't want to say, therefore, that every single possible idea must be equally true, because I don't know if that's the case, but it might be. But I just don't know. But I'm not the type who says like Christianity is the only option out there. I do tend to empathize with other religions and want to learn from them as well. And so, yeah, I just think it's silly if we kind of dismiss religion as a source of inquiry when we're exploring stuff that in essence is about a hidden spiritual world. There are links there, I think.
Okay, and we know you're a horror fan. Beardo
Yes.
just asked, Beardo Gets Scared has asked, what is your favorite horror movie stroke franchise?
Oh man, I don't know if you can see on here, right? But like over here, I've got these like blueprints of kind of famous horror houses. I love the Amityville horror.
Amityville, Exorcist,
big fan of that.
Poltergeist.
The Exorcist, yeah, that's Poltergeist house. Down there is Psycho house, and over there's the Entity house. But my favorite,
they are so cool.
Yeah, they're great. It was for this art gallery project that I helped. I worked on. I didn't make them. I just did the spiel for it. But anyway, but my favorite supernatural film is the 1980 horror film with George C. Scott called The Changeling, and it's just I think it's an absolutely superb haunted house film, which I recommend. And I love George Romero's first trilogy, Night of the Living Dead, Day of the Dead, and Dawn of the Dead. I think they're amazing. I met George Romero once, and he was wonderful.
Oh, cool. That's really cool.
Yeah.
I think, I mean, as much as I could chat to you, I don't want to keep too much longer. So thank you so much for coming on. It's been an absolute pleasure.
Thank you.
Really fascinating conversation, really fascinating topic. So thank you so much for coming on.
Thank you. Thanks for having me, everyone. And apologies for the sound issue.
And no. And just before we go, I mean, you can plug as much as you want now. So obviously we're going to definitely have to plug Into the Fog. Not that it needs much plugging, to be honest, but
yeah. If you look for Into the Fog with Peter Laws, you'll find my YouTube channel, and it'd be great if you wanted to check that out. And you follow me on all the socials at Rev Peter Laws, or I've got books, 4 novels and non-fiction book, and the 14 times I'm in there every month.
I was going to say 40. I was going to say writing for 14 times. Are you doing anything more for Uncanny, or is it?
Not at the moment. I think I was in the first 3 seasons of that, but I wasn't in the 4th. But you tend to just find that out like a week or so before.
Oh, really? So quick?
Yeah.
Well, like I say, definitely. Anybody who's not subscribed to Into the Fog, trust me, it is an absolutely fantastic channel.
Thank you.
So professionally done, so well put together by Peter. So absolutely, go and subscribe if you've not already done so, because I can thoroughly recommend it. It's so good.
Welcome back to the studio. Peter is a very knowledgeable man. A little bit younger than me, but knowledgeable nonetheless. No one ever said that logic, knowledge, and experience is only based on age. Being beyond legally blind for 2 years, it limited me on where I could travel to, how I could travel. Now, hopefully I won't have any issues getting a driver's license back, and somehow finding a vehicle so I don't have to take the wife's and leave her stranded, and doing some better investigations at some new, better locations. Losing the job 6 months ago, losing the job 7 months ago was a huge challenge. The wife done everything in her power to keep things up while I was fighting to regain my vision. And now that it's back, I've come to find that it's even harder in a small Michigan village to try to find a job that I'm gonna make enough money to catch things up, let alone do my investigations, update my equipment. And with gas prices the way they are now, try to keep another vehicle up and running while helping her keep hers up and running so she can get back and forth to work. What do you think? Is paranormal a new type of religion? Seems odd, but it seems logical. The way Peter discusses folks in the paranormal field having that same determination, that same outlook, and those same questions as folks who are very, very deep into their churches. Kind of makes you wonder, don't it? But that's all we got for you this week. I hope you enjoyed this interview with Peter Laws and enjoyed seeing Paranormal Monkey again. Definitely, if you get the chance, go over and check out Peter's channel right here on YouTube and check out his Into the Fog podcast. And definitely go over and check out Paranormal Monkey. Let him know that Paranormal Papa sent you. Until next week, take care of yourselves, take care of each other. God bless you, God love you, we do. And happy hunting.